Terrified and a virgin at 25, she discovered an incredible transformative love from a cowboy, and Emily Roberts stood before her bathroom mirror, her reflection swimming in nervous energy. At 25, she had built a life defined by the predictability of small-town Texas, a nurse by day, managing her family's simmering expectations by night. But no matter how many lives she stitched together at the clinic, her heart wouldn't let go of the weight pressing against it. She could feel the whispers of her mother, pushing her towards an ideal: a husband, a house, a perfect daughter, but deep down, whatever spark she had for those ideals was dulled by the fear of intimacy. The secret of her virginity gnawed at her, entwining her self-esteem in a tangled mess of shame and avoidance. Tonight was the charity event at Town Hall, the kind of gathering where dreams seemed to hang like festive streamers overhead. Emily inhaled the mingled aromas of barbecue, recalling the families gathered in joy, struggling yet hopeful. But as she donned an understated navy dress, the rising hysteria in her chest reminded her that beneath the smiles could lie the icy grip of desperation. Should she play the part of the dutiful daughter, or carve out a life free from the expectations that smothered her? As if answering her dilemma, a rugged cowboy named Jake entered her sphere. He was captivating, his stories of ranch life wrapping around her like a warm blanket, shattering her preconceptions of love. Emily found herself leaning in closer, enraptured by his sincerity, laughing a little too loud at his anecdotes. With every shared glance, she felt her heart unfurl, a flower daring to blossom in the presence of unfiltered warmth. Yet, the shadow of her past smirked at her newfound feelings, whispering that she wasn't enough for someone like him. How could a man like Jake be drawn to a nurse whose fears snared her in loneliness? As they volunteered side by side, the tension twisted within her like a coiled serpent. Uplifting laughter and melodic banter masked the inner storm swirling inside. But Jake's sunny demeanor faded when he spoke of his family's ranch, swallowed by debts that threatened their legacy. The stories of perseverance and struggle struck hard at Emily's core, wrapping her emotions in a strange conflict of compassion and desire. Here was a man burdened by the weight of hopelessness, and she stood powerless on the brink of incredible longing. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The more she learned about Jake's plight, the more Emily felt the burn of desire intertwined tightly with fear. His vulnerability yanked her heart, dragging her to face a turbulent reality she'd avoided for too long. What if she dove into this intoxicating connection? She could risk becoming a lifeline for someone she barely knew, or retreat back into a life dictated by the unyielding expectations of her family. The thought alone stung. The dichotomy of wanting a life bursting with affection and the dread of failing terrified her. As the crowd enveloped them, joy bloomed around Emily, a harsh contrast to the storm brewing within. She stood at a precipice, a tension pulsing through her veins as she quietly questioned if she had the strength to break through the barriers she'd so carefully constructed. This moment could either be her liberation or her undoing, and suddenly, the air between them felt electric. A choice loomed, heavy and undeniable, yet she remained frozen, engulfed in the adrenaline of possibility yet paralyzed by a lifetime of fear. Would she step into the open heart of a cowboy, or recede back into her isolated shell? Emily's heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the chatter and laughter swirling around her. The flickering lights above seemed to pulse with the tension between her longing and her fears, illuminating faces that smiled and danced, blissfully unaware of her internal struggle. Jake stood a few steps away, leaning against the wooden banister, the soft glow from the overhead lights highlighting the angles of his rugged face. In that moment, he was not just a man with troubles of his own, he was a potential pathway through her labyrinth of insecurities. Their eyes met, and something inside her trembled, a wild mix of hope, frustration, and trepidation swelled within her. Every second stretched into infinity as she stood there, frozen in possibility until the space between them seemed unbearable. Jake's warmth emanated a silent question: what would she choose? The safety of her solitude or the boldness of vulnerability? The tension coiled tighter as she blinked back, tears, her walls shaking under the weight of what might come. "That was a great story about the calf you saved last week," she said, her voice unexpectedly steady. "Thanks. It felt good to help out, he replied, his eyes glimmering with gratitude but shadowed by the burdens he bore. The thought of becoming someone's support rattled her, but the notion of being one of many a face in the crowd tightened her throat. They moved closer, natural conversation flowing like a slowly rising tide, yet the undertow of their unspoken truths pulled at her every word. Emily found herself leaning deeper into the conversation, drawn to his laughter, his sincerity. Perhaps this was what she needed to engage with someone whose dreams were as fragile as her own, but then doubt clouded her. What if he saw beyond the surface, peeling back the layers of her insecurities? What if he discovered her secret? The bravado she had carefully crafted began to slip through her fingers, leaving her teetering at the edge of commitment. The desire to reaffirm her worth blossomed alongside her fear, and again she felt the urge to retreat. Distraction lurked nearby in the form of her friends, a group she had relied on for affirmation. Their laughter echoed louder, muffling her inner voice. "Emily!" one called, drawing her attention. "Join us for the dance." The invitation hung in the air, a lifeline and a trap. She glanced back at Jake, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. Perhaps a dance was a safe way to drop her guard without fully surrendering. "Let us go," she blurted, surprising herself more than anyone else. As she swept toward her friends, her heart pounded not just from excitement but from fear. The music wrapped around her, and as she nestled into the rhythm, fleeting moments felt surreal, almost dreamlike. She twirled, lost in the movement, yet Jake's gaze anchored her. That unfiltered connection sparked something deep within her, the need to rise above the fear. But when the music slowed, and the dance floor turned to whispers of young love and bright futures, Emily felt a churning uncertainty. Surrounded by couples, her newfound courage began to wane. This moment, this electrifying connection seemed all too fragile. She wanted the courage to reach out to Jake, to express the coiling longing within her, but the weight of her virginity felt like a leaden anchor, and she stumbled. The room spun, and as laughter melded into a cacophony of shared stories, she began to recognize her own voice within it, no longer solely authored by her fears but gradually shaped by her yearning for connection. Yet as she battled the compatibility of social expectations with her own heart, a chilling possibility arose: could she truly leap beyond her fears? In that tantalizing moment, a familiar dread washed over her. If she failed to embrace her desire, she risked suffocating beneath the weight of unfulfilled potential. And just as she gathered the courage to turn back towards Jake, she met his eyes again, an intense conversation swirling there without any words exchanged. Each heartbeat thumped a question louder than the last. Would she have the strength to confront the cowboy who ignited a flicker of hope deep within? The moment hummed like a breath held, and Emily found herself teetering on the brink of a revelation. It was time to decide, to confront the fears that had long held her captive. Would she finally take the plunge, or retreat into the comfort of uncertainty? As the music faded into melancholic tones, the world around Emily shrank to just Jake and the pulsing beat of her heart. The laughter of her friends was swallowed by a drum of uncertainty, yet she found herself breathing deeply. Now was the moment that could either solidify her transformation or cling her to the shadows of fear. What was it that Jake saw? Was it worth risking everything she had constructed? She glanced at the other couples, their closeness igniting a flicker of envy within her. Each touch, each whisper between them felt like additional weights anchoring her beneath the surface. The desire for connection battled with her reluctance to reveal vulnerabilities. Yet, in these brief instants, Emily felt stirred by the possibility of breaking free from her self-imposed shackles. "Emily?" Jake's voice finally reached her through the thick fog of her anxiety, drawing her gaze. "Are you okay?" His sincerity pierced through the noise and reached her core. In those earnest eyes, she saw reflections of her own struggles and dreams. He wasn't just a cowboy, he was an embodiment of what she yearned to uncover. She began, hesitating on the edge of personal revelation as her fears clawed at her resolve. In her brief pause, images flashed of all the prior moments she'd let slip away, haunted by self-doubt. "I'm fine," she lied, forcing a smile that felt brittled. A fleeting expression passed over his face, half hopeful, half concerned. The weight of her truth pressed heavily on her chest, a truth she had never dared to voice. She recognized the urge to hide again, to retreat into the known safety of her solitude. But what if today were the day she dismantled those defenses? "Emily," he said, leaning closer, his voice a gentle caress to her tangled thoughts. "You're not fine. I can tell."
And you don't have to pretend with me.
There was an earnestness in his tone that sparked something within her, a possibility shimmering like distant stars. It's just, she faltered again, struggling against the fear that tightly coiled around her heart.
I've never really been in a position where I feel I can trust someone. Not like this. Jake's expression softened.
Then let us not rush.
Trust takes time, right? But it's okay to want more, to explore what's here.
His genuine intent broke the chains of doubt gripping her.
He wasn't pressing her for something that she wasn't ready to offer.
Rather, his words appeared as tendrils reaching to invite her to unfold, to dare to take that leap at her own pace. In that fragile moment of clarity, Emily realized that it wasn't just the fear of vulnerability that paralyzed her, but the fear of potential joy.
After years of embracing isolation, she suddenly felt the urge to emerge.
Maybe I've hidden for long enough, she thought, heart racing with the prospect of letting someone in. I think I need help to figure this out, she whispered, surprised by her own admission. Each word felt like a small act of defiance against her past self, a request for connection instead of an apology for it. Jake smiled, a stunning light breaking through her uncertainty. I'll be right here, Emily.
Just take it one step at a time.
Her shoulders relaxed as she gradually began to unwind from the pressure of perfection. This was the moment she yearned for, a breath of fresh air in a suffocating room.
Yet even as she felt the healing flowers of courage start to bloom within her, an undercurrent of trepidation lingered.
Could she truly navigate this new path without letting past fears overshadow her future aspirations? As the music resumed, lifting the atmosphere once more, Emily felt the torrent of her emotions settle. There was work to do, confronting not only her fears with Jake but also those haunting remnants of her past that stoked her insecurities. She could no longer be the silent observer. It was time to embrace the uncomfortable, the tumultuous sea of feelings that lay beyond the safety of her walls, and as their conversation continued to flow, Emily found herself yearning to go deeper. The idea of sharing her story faltered in her mind, and the weight of her secrets threatened to close in once more. Could she strip away the layers she had wrapped herself in and allow not just Jake but herself to see the raw, unguarded truth? With the air thick with unsaid words, she looked at him, wondering not just about her next step, but the consequence of acknowledging the depth of her heart's desire. What truths would she reveal, and could she face the darkest corners of her past?
The night lingered in the balance, suspended between vulnerability and the powerful urge to retreat deeper into her silence.
As the evening wore on, Emily felt the weight of her uncertainty ebbing away like the tide receding from the shore. Each gentle exchange with Jake unveiled new layers of her own guarded heart. The music pulsing around them blended with her rapidly evolving internal dialogue, coaxing her toward a precipice of revelation. She leaned against the wooden railing, glancing at the crowd swirling in laughter and light. A part of her longed to join their revelry, to be swept up in carefree joy, yet another part clung to the shadows of her past. Additionally, the magnitude of her moment with Jake pressed heavily on her thoughts.
Would this small step toward honesty turn into a larger leap toward self-discovery? What would she uncover about herself in the process?
Emily, Jake prompted again, his voice gently laced with encouragement.
What do you want? What are you feeling right now?
The sincerity in his question struck deep, forcing her to confront a truth she had evaded for years. With a trembling breath, she considered the path that had led her here, a string of choices dictated by fear and hesitation.
How often had she allowed herself to become paralyzed by the what-ifs?
I want to be open, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper.
The realization hung in the space between them.
For so long, she had kept herself sheltered, an observer of life rather than a participant.
The thought of embracing vulnerability felt liberating yet terrifying. Would she regret it, or was this the beginning of something transformative?
Then let us do it together, he suggested, leaning closer, a reassuring warmth radiating from him. She could feel his unwavering support surrounding her like a protective shield, emboldening her spirit.
No pressure, just honesty. Start with something simple. Emily couldn't ignore the surge of newfound determination.
During the countless hours spent in solitude, she never imagined that the key to her fears would reveal itself in a single encouraging voice. She took a slow breath, parsing through the layers of her heart and mind, searching for something of substance to share.
I've held on to this fear of letting people see me seeing the real me, she began,
feeling the words stand boldly in the air. It's like I built this wall, allowing only glimpses of who I am to show through small cracks. I thought if I stayed small, if I kept quiet, everything would be fine.
But it hasn't been.
Jake nodded, his gaze steady, urging her to continue.
The vulnerability in her confession felt like removing a thick, suffocating blanket.
It was just one admission, but she recognized how it carried the seeds of personal growth. Perhaps this journey of peeling back her layers would bloom into something much more beautiful than she had ever envisioned. I've spent so long thinking that opening up would make me weak, that the world outside wouldn't understand.
But lately, I see how isolating that has been.
Her voice trembled slightly as the weight of her truth exchanged hands, laying bare a part of her she seldom dared to articulate. "This is who you are, and it's okay, Emily," Jake assured gently.
"It's a strength to acknowledge your vulnerabilities. Don't forget that." As they stood there amidst the swirling, jubilant atmosphere, a powerful silence enveloped them. For the first time, she felt seen, valued, and connected to someone who understood her journey. Each inhalation seemed to scatter the remnants of self-doubt, yet, in stark contrast, another nagging thought clawed at the backdrop of her mind. What if revealing herself didn't lead to acceptance but disappointment? Could she withstand heartbreak again? She watched Jake, contemplating the depth of her feelings. Doubt loomed heavy once again, juxtaposed against the clarity of her past vulnerabilities. "Jake," she said, voice steadier, resolved. "What if I can't be who you think I am?" His response was instant, his features unwavering as he placed his hand on hers. "I think you can. And even if you stumble, I'll be right beside you." In that moment, the door swung wide open, revealing the uncertain path that lay ahead, but there was warmth in knowing she wouldn't walk it alone. With resolve thrumming in her veins and a surge of anticipation electrifying the air, she prepared to explore the uncharted territory of honesty and connection. As they resumed their conversation, Emily's heart quickened with the knowledge that each word could form a bridge to a deeper understanding both of herself and of what might lie beyond her fears. But the road ahead still remained perilous, filled with shadows yet to confront. What else would emerge from the depths of her soul? Would facing her buried past lend her the courage to traverse the unknowns of this newfound connection, or would the specters of her history threaten to unravel everything she had begun to cherish? Emily stood at the threshold of a new unfolding narrative, echoing with whispers of uncertainty and revelation. The autumn night enveloped them, the breeze carrying scents of crisp leaves and possibility. She could feel the weight of her past creeping up like shadows, threatening to drown out the bright promise of authenticity that glimmered ahead. As Jake spoke softly, she found herself dissecting his words, each syllable a catalyst for the swelling tide of her emotions. He was a paradox, a man who effortlessly combined strength and vulnerability, igniting in her a longing to aspire to the same. Could she match his courage? Could she delve deeper than she ever thought possible? "Do you see yourself dancing?" Jake's question cut through her introspection. "Dancing?" she echoed, a one-word inquiry laced with disbelief. "Yes, I mean truly feeling music in your bones, letting it move you," he explained, his eyes sparking with enthusiasm. "To express yourself, not just physically, but emotionally." The thought danced at the edges of her mind like a flickering flame trying to catch. She had shut herself off from so much joy, fearing she'd be consumed. The notion of dancing, of losing herself to the rhythm, of feeling the rebel inside an acted expression of unfiltered emotion felt daunting. What if I trip? What if I look foolish? That fear pales in comparison to the joy of freedom, Jake stated, his voice steady yet filled with infectious excitement. Your journey is about embracing every part of you, even the imperfect parts. At that moment, she recognized what he was truly offering, an invitation to loosen the grip on her inhibitions and to step into the world with open arms. Could this be her leap? Would stepping into a light-hearted act like dancing symbolize a more profound plunge into her own vulnerability? But doubts shadowed her budding enthusiasm. Wouldn't it be easier to stay safe, to observe rather than participate? What if I embarrass myself in front of others? Safety isn't living, Emily. What's life if not a string of moments that challenge you? Consider how rewarding the outcome could be, Jake replied. His gaze pierced through her layers of anxiety. What was she scared of truly? The echoes of past failures? The records of her inadequacies?
Or the simple, cruel reality that she had actively avoided joy all for the sake of not being hurt again? As she gathered her thoughts, a spark ignited within her.
A realization: every moment she had held back was an opportunity lost.
It was time to break down the fortress she had fortified over the years.
Okay, she said, each syllable becoming a promise to herself. Let us dance.
Uncertainty twisted in her stomach, but alongside it was an exhilarating thrill to unravel parts of her she had tucked away. Hand in hand, they stepped toward the bonfire shimmering at the far side of the gathering space. She felt a tremor inside, a pulse of raw potential urging her forward. As they approached the bonfire, laughter echoed like a magnetic current, pulling Emily closer to the thrumming heart of the festivities. She could barely articulate the thoughts flooding her mind but found comfort in the warmth radiating from her connection with Jake.
Was she ready to reveal herself fully?
Jake turned to her, eyebrows raised, a teasing grin that beckoned her to unleash.
What are you waiting for, Emily?
The question hung in the air, a challenge, a call to action. Letting go, she mused softly, testing the words on her tongue.
Each syllable felt like a piece of armor starting to rust away.
She realized that vulnerability didn't mean becoming fragile. Instead, it could embody strength to dance, to move, to be alive.
But could she go beyond this moment? When the music faded and the nights grew quiet, would she remember this resolve?
The beat of the music began to rise around them, and with it, her heart raced, suspended on a cusp of transformation.
Would stepping onto this floor mean she could step into the fullness of her own life, or would she collapse under the weight of expectation? The moment beckoned. Tantalizingly close, yet daunting.
It surged forward like a tidal wave, an opportunity shimmering in the chaos, but she hesitated at the edge, eyes locked on Jake, seeking reassurance.
Are you ready?
He asked, a quiet confidence tethered his words. Heavy honesty loomed over her, forcing her to confront her deepest insecurities. Her fear became palpable, but with it, a glimmer of resolve.
What if she seized this moment?
The decision loomed large. She could allow doubt to win, or she could shift into the dance of her own life, undeterred and ready to face whatever lay ahead.
What lay around the next turn of this journey? Would she find that courage within her, or would the ghosts of self-doubt hold her back? The moment was electric.
With the crackling bonfire illuminating her face, Emily felt a rush that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Jake's question lingered in her mind, igniting a conflict that simmered beneath the surface.
Could she truly cross the threshold from fear to freedom?
The rhythm of the music enveloped her, beckoning her into the fray, yet she stood, anchored by the weight of her past. Jake's encouragement hung in the air like a tether, unyielding and potent. She watched the dancers move, each twist and turn capturing the essence of pure expression, the liberation she had long denied herself. They didn't care about judgment or missteps, they were simply living in the moment. A vision of herself, fluid, vibrant, was emerging, yet it slipped through her fingers like smoke. As the music swelled, Emily felt a conflict rip through her, a visceral tug-of-war. To dance was to expose herself, to embrace vulnerability in ways she had carefully guarded against. Could she shed the scars of past disappointments that whispered harsh reminders of her failures?
Emily.
Jake's voice pulled her back to the present.
This is your moment. Don't let it slip away.
With every word he spoke, the urge to break through washed over her. The fire crackled, mirroring the chaos in her heart. She inhaled sharply, gathering the courage that had eluded her for so long.
What if I fail?
The question darted through her mind, sparking self-doubt. Failure means you tried, and trying is where the magic happens. His confidence wrapped around her, igniting a flame of defiance against the creeping shadows. She was at a crossroads, the choice was within her grasp. Tentatively, she stepped forward, instinctively moving to the edge of the circle where the music pulsed, enveloping her. Every heartbeat amplified her fear and hope in equal measure. She felt Jake's presence at her back, like an anchor tethering her to this precarious act of bravery. Suddenly, she wanted to discover the weight of her own potential rather than be defined by her inadequacies. As the rhythm intensified, she closed her eyes and surrendered to the moment. The music began to weave through her bones, a symphony beckoning her to let go of inhibitions. Tentative steps evolved into spirited movements. She stumbled, a fleeting sign of her fear, but something extraordinary happened. Her laughter rang out, punctuating the air, breaking the chains of doubt. This was no longer merely about dancing, it was a reclamation of her spirit. Each twist and leap felt like unearthing fragments of who she had been afraid to embrace. Around her, the world blurred, fading into an ethereal presence where the only thing that mattered was this truth: she was alive. Jake watched her, pride lighting his features as he clapped to the beat. The warmth of his gaze ignited a sense of belonging that steadied her breath, even as the chaos of her emotions swirled within. Then, as the song reached its crescendo, a pivotal thought struck her. This wasn't just a moment of expression, it was a testament to everything she had held back. She started to see how each fear faced was a notch of resilience carved into her spirit. What if she could carry this newfound sense of freedom beyond tonight? What if this moment became the catalyst for a broader transformation? As the music slowed, Emily felt exhilaration transform into something deeper, a yearning for revolution, not only in her dance but in her life. The notions of fear began shifting, giving way to an emerging narrative of potential. But then, just as she began to relax into this revelation, a familiar figure appeared on the edge of the bonfire's light, and her heart sank. There was Jonathan, someone from her past who carried echoes of unresolved conflict and inadequacy. The air chilled, and Emily's pulse quickened, the surge of vulnerability finding new definition. The moment had shifted again. She was on the brink of embracing her journey, but now she faced the ghosts of her past. Would she let fear disrupt her newfound sense of empowerment, or could she confront Jonathan and fully claim her voice? Uncertainty washed over her, but for the first time, she felt the weight of her past morph into a challenge, a test of the resilience she was beginning to own. Each step forward had led to this point. As she met Jonathan's gaze, a reservoir of questions surfaced, and the pivotal choice loomed again. Would she embrace her evolution, or retreat into the safety of her old self? The music faded, leaving his silence thick with anticipation, and she knew the next chapter of her story awaited. What would she choose? Emily felt the weight of Jonathan's gaze sink like a stone in her stomach, displacing the newfound lightness she had uncovered just moments before. The laughter still echoed faintly in her ears, but it was overshadowed by the intrusive reminder of her past. Anger and fear coiled within her, creating a tight knot as she fought to maintain the fragile strength she had just discovered. "Emily," he said, voice smooth as the whiskey he used to drink, but also with a tension that twisted her resolve. "I didn't expect to see you here." There it was, the casual dismissal of all the hurt that lingered between them. It cut deeper than the chill in the air. His presence stirred memories that darkened her spirit. She remembered how he had once made her feel small, diminishing her aspirations behind a facade of charm. Yet there was a flicker of something else, a shimmer of resolve deep within her that she could hold on to. This wasn't just about who she used to be, it was also about who she could become. "What are you doing here, Jonathan?" The words came out sharper than she intended, but they broke the spell of silence, slicing through the air heavy with tension. She surprised herself. This was courage, a single act grounded in authenticity. "Just passing through, thought I'd say hi," he replied, rolling his eyes as if they were acquaintances years removed from any poignant history. For Emily, it felt like time had rewound, reducing her to that uncertain girl who craved validation, who had let Jonathan dictate her worth. But tonight, that girl felt distant. She was standing on the threshold of reclaiming her power. In the pulsating light of the bonfire, she finally got a good look at him, the boy from her past still clinging to the arrogance that once charmed her. Yet, in this moment, she felt less drawn to his magnetic presence and more resolved to confront her own emotional landscape. "I've changed," she said, hesitant at first but growing in strength with every syllable. "You can't keep pulling me back into old narratives." Jonathan smirked, a sad reflection of the boy she once knew, but it did little to dim the fire growing inside her. "Or maybe you're just running from the past." His words clawed at her, an attempt to unearth hidden insecurities. But now, Emily found her heart steadying instead of racing wildly. "Maybe facing it is how I learned to move forward," she countered, surprising herself with the clarity and firmness in her voice. "I'm not afraid of what you represent anymore." That shimmering resolve ignited within her, fanning the flames that had flickered with Jake's support earlier. She saw the anxious dancers around the bonfire, their movements reflecting feelings she was reframing. Wasn't this territory uncharted? Each step alongside them, testing the limits of judgment and acceptance, showed her that vulnerability was not a shackle but a passageway to genuine freedom. Jonathan took a step closer, the distance between them shrinking in a way that felt menacing.
You think a few spins on the dance floor can change who you are? No.
I know it, Emily declared, her voice steady, confidence seeping into the cracks of her past wounds. It's not about the dance, it's about taking ownership of my choices. With each word, she felt lighter. The grip of doubt wasn't gone, but it had begun to morph. The concept of failure shifted into lessons learned, a narrative no longer dominated by fear. Each confrontation with Jonathan was a reminder that she was forging an identity independent of him. Behind her, Jake watched, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips as if he sensed the transformation taking place. His belief in her was a steady wind, lifting her higher as she faced Jonathan head-on.
Do you really think you can just break free?
Jonathan scoffed, a defensive edge to his voice, trying to reinstate control. I know I can, Emily replied resolutely, her pulse steadying, her heart swelling with a conviction that surged within her. I'm going to embrace every piece of who I am, even the broken ones. As she loosened the knot of tension, she extended a hand behind her, seeking the familiarity of Jake's presence. The connection she felt with him reminded her that she didn't have to navigate this uncertainty alone, yet just as Jonathan's expression shifted, something ignited in his eyes, something she could neither understand nor prepare for. Could this be the start of a rupture, a death of old expectations? Or was it a mere prelude to a struggle for validation? Yet again, with renewed determination, she met Jonathan's gaze, clutching the new resolve to confront her past without crumbling. But she also couldn't ignore the tremors of conflict sparking between them, questioning whether this confrontation would consolidate her growth or reinforce the wall she had been trying to break down. As silence hung thick in the air between them, and the music began to swell again, Emily stood at a precipice, heart racing in anticipation. Would she break through, or would the ghosts of her past snare her once more? The tension hung heavy, a web of potential waiting to unfold as she prepared for the next challenge. The air around Emily crackled with unspoken words, each second stretching just a little too long as she held Jonathan's gaze. Uncertainty surged, competing with the newfound clarity that had shielded her from the darkness of her past. She had spent years trying to navigate the storms of self-doubt, all the while stifling the woman she was becoming. Yet now, standing her ground, she felt a pulse of strength that was both exhilarating and terrifying.
What makes you think I haven't tea already?
Jonathan challenged, a sneer playing at the corners of his mouth. The challenge in his voice was a barrier, one that she felt ready to dismantle. His bravado was an echo of someone who once possessed a part of her soul.
No longer, she thought.
I'm done waiting for your approval, Emily said, firming her resolve.
You can't dictate my worth anymore.
Even as she spoke, a flicker of doubt slithered into her mind, taunting her with the history they shared.
But she forced it down, redirecting the focus inward. What she could not shake was Jake's unwavering presence anchoring her, a calm amidst the chaos.
His supportive energy radiated from behind, a reminder that this confrontation was not merely for herself, but also for those who believed in her capacity to rise above. Jonathan stepped back slightly, the smirk wavering. Perhaps he felt the shift in the air, the emergence of an Emily he hadn't anticipated. Have you ever considered that maybe you're just fooling yourself? He pressed, though the confidence in his voice seemed to falter.
No. I've seen the truth, Jonathan.
The only fool here was the one who thought he could keep me trapped in a cage of expectations. Anger simmered, nurturing her strength, grounding her through the chaos of old memories. In the shimmering glow of the bonfire, as dancers twirled blissfully unaware, she saw the contrast between her past and future. This was not just a moment but a turning tide, a beckoning forward rather than a retreat into the shadows of self-doubt. Each heartbeat reminded her of her promise to embrace all parts of herself, spurring her onward.
Then what now, Emily? You think you can just walk away from what we had?
His tone transformed, softer, as if he were trying to evoke nostalgia, yet it felt more desperate than appealing. Yes, I do, she confessed, the weight of her past grappling with her resolve, but she chose to let it go.
What we had isn't my reality anymore.
That life was suffocating. The flickering flames caught Jonathan's eye, drawing a shadow across his face. He opened his mouth, perhaps to respond, but the moment stretched into silence. She felt a powerful surge akin to liberation, and the tension sparked something deeper within her. Jake stepped closer, offering a reassuring glance that surged through her, a reminder of the new possibilities that awaited. Could she allow herself to anchor in this newfound solidarity? Metaphorically tethered, both to her past and present, Emily understood that she could only navigate this precipice toward growth. Every choice I've made brought me to this point, she continued, lifting her chin defiantly. I deserve to move forward with open eyes, not imprisoned by memories. With each second that ticked by, she sensed the balance shifting, the unsteady scale of emotional manipulation tipping toward empowerment. Was Jonathan losing his grip? Would her strength finally overshadow the chains he once clasped around her? As the music thudded with invigorating energy, Emily could feel a rising storm within and outside. Shadows and lights danced in the distance, casting silhouettes of doubt, yet she stood unfaltering, the heaviness of doubt lessening with each passing moment. Let me show you what it looks like to emerge from the dark, she said softly, a final challenge lingering on her lips. One hand reached for Jake, a silent promise of support lingering between them, yet just as she felt the tide shift in her favor, Jonathan's expression twisted, revealing a flicker of something darker beneath the surface: frustration, rage, or perhaps even desperation. Could he truly accept her metamorphosis? I wouldn't let you go so easily, Emily, he spat, venom lacing his voice, an attempt to claw back the control he feared losing. Emily straightened, her heart racing, a mix of fear and resolve surging anew. Was this just the beginning of a battle not only for her identity but for her future? The tension thickened, becoming a living entity, as she took a deliberate step forward, preparing to face whatever came next. Was Jonathan willing to relive the shadows of the past, or was this her moment to truly break free? The ground felt tenuous beneath her feet, yet her spirit was buoyed by the challenges ahead. She was prepared to fight, ready to redefine not only her relationship with him but her relationship with herself. Would she emerge victorious, or would she find herself ensnared once more? The moment hung heavy in the air as Jonathan's harsh words echoed in Emily's mind. She had summoned every ounce of courage to confront him, and yet his determination to reassert control sent tremors of doubt spiraling through her. But there was no turning back. Her feet were rooted in a desire for autonomy, a silent rebellion against the lingering echoes of a life that sought to define her. Do you really think you can just dismiss everything we built? Jonathan's voice dripped with accusation, a sharp reminder of her previous entanglement. But she wouldn't allow his attempts to rattle her. Instead, she fixed her gaze on the swirling embers of the bonfire, seeking strength in the chaos of flickering lights and shadows. No, she retorted, the word escaping with newfound clarity. What we built was never solid. It was built on your expectations, your needs, and your version of what I should be. Each word carried weight, a dismissal of the chains that had once shackled her spirit. Jake's supportive presence behind her provided an anchor, a validation of her choice to defy Jonathan. She could feel him breathing with her, a gentle rhythm that collided with her rising heartbeat. This was not just a confrontation, it was a pivot toward redefining herself. Emily prided herself on her evolving insight, aware that her silence in the past was not a lack of strength but a misunderstanding of her capabilities. As Jonathan responded, fury lacing his tone, she sensed the desperation in his demeanor. She had ignited something within him, fear of losing the power he'd held for so long. In that realization, a spark of empathy flickered through her, a reminder of the vulnerability masked by the bravado. Who are you without me, Emily? He demanded, frustration igniting his features. You've always needed me. It was a lie that resonated through their past, but her years of soul-searching and painful introspection dismantled that belief. I am the person who needs herself, Jonathan. That's what you never understood. Each word cut deeper than the last, an emotional dagger both released and anchored by years of self-doubt she had finally shed. With that admission, she recognized her growth. She had come to redefine her worth, not as an accessory to someone else's story, but as the protagonist of her own. The thought invigorated her. She stepped back, not in retreat, but to affirm her grounding in reality. Jonathan's expression twisted disbelief and anger mingling, but behind it, she discerned an unease that suggested the walls holding his fortress of control were starting to crack. Is this really you or just a phase? He spat, the words tinged with palpable insecurity. Oh, it's very much me, she responded, her voice resolute. And this phase includes shedding anyone who refuses to accept me as I am. The finality in her tone sent ripples through the air, as if she had cast open the gates to a new chapter in her life. The music swelled around them, a backdrop to her emotional cataclysm. Emily took a breath, feeling the heaviness in her shoulders release, the tightness in her chest gradually loosening. It was an awakening, the culmination of years of self-exploration and discovery. But while the flames danced with their spontaneous energy, the turbulence in front of her remained. Jonathan's eyes glinted with something unpredictable. Was it desperation or realization? She sensed that this battle wouldn't end here, but she was no longer paralyzed by the fear of his influence. "Goodbye, Jonathan," she said firmly, almost as a mantra. As she turned to leave, a feeling of exhilaration washed over her. Freedom was tangible. Yet something lurked on the edges of her mind, a nagging concern about the unresolved tension that lingered in Jonathan's eyes. How far would he go to reclaim the narrative he'd written for her? Jake's hand found hers, a reminder of connection amid the uncertainty. Yet, she knew that the next steps would not be without challenges. Emily was about to enter uncharted territory, one defined by her own choices, not dictated by someone else's vision. With every step she took away from the bonfire, the ground beneath her felt firmer. But in a world where old ghosts often resurfaced, would she have the courage to face them head-on? The journey to self-realization had begun, but would it lead to true independence, or would old patterns attempt to ensnare her once more? The answer loomed, tantalizing and terrifying. Days turned into weeks after the charity event, and Emily Roberts found herself on an entirely new path, a highway paved with her own choices and a sense of agency that she had never fully embraced before. The echoes of that night lingered, each moment serving as a fulcrum that shifted her perspective on her past and future. In her small-town clinic, every shift she worked had begun to feel lighter. No longer was she just a dutiful daughter or the nurse who offered the same rote reassurance to patients. She had stepped into her narrative, shaped by revelations and resilience. Each patient's smile felt like a shared secret, reminders of strength and vulnerability, connecting them in a profound dance of humanity. As she ripped off the pages of self-doubt, Emily found herself diving full throttle into her vocation. She became not just a healer but an advocate for those struggling with personal battles. Conversations started to flow more easily, ones discussing mental health and emotional burdens that often remained unspoken. Each dialogue opened her eyes wider, revealing the symphony of connected experiences, and she felt propelled to be at the forefront of change. She organized workshops on emotional well-being and partnered with local organizations to launch initiatives focused on intimate health. These projects blossomed, with the community eagerly participating in discussions that had long been brushed under the rug. Emily exuded a solid confidence that astonished even herself. "I can walk this road," she thought, realizing that her fears no longer limited her aspirations but propelled them forward. The most transformative piece, however, lay in her relationship with Jake. With every passing day, he became a constant, a reflection of hope and vulnerability, the very elements she was daring to explore. One early autumn evening, under an oak tree draped with twinkling lights, they shared another conversation, this time more intimate, a celebration of who they had become together. "Do you remember the night we danced at the bonfire?" Emily began, her heart racing as she mulled over the memory, which felt like a milestone of transformation. "Of course," he replied, affection radiating from his soulful gaze. "It was magical watching you unfurl." In that moment, Emily recognized how far she had come from the terrified woman clutching onto her fears like a lifeline. "I've grown, Jake. I've realized I am not defined by anyone else's expectations but my own." Each word resonated between them, solidifying the bond they had nurtured through encouragement and shared experiences. She noticed a glimmer of pride in his eyes. It was an acknowledgement, a recognition of her evolution. Their conversations were no longer about avoiding vulnerability. They became platforms of trust where raw honesty flowed freely. The initiative to confront and share their insecurities became a constant learning experience, allowing them to grow individually while simultaneously deepening their connection. When Jake asked about her aspirations beyond the clinic, Emily felt her voice strong and unwavering. "I want to continue to advocate for those struggling with the weight of expectation. I won't let fear dictate my purpose anymore." The confrontation with Jonathan had given her much more than freedom. It had ignited a fire within her, a desire to uplift others who, like her, grappled with personal shadows. Moments later, she found herself on the cusp of a leap that felt exhilarating. Emily had been invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference in a neighboring city, an event centered on blending emotional resilience with professional growth. When she accepted the invitation, a wave of pride washed over her. This was the ultimate affirmation that she had conquered her internal battles. It was on that stage, before a sea of longing faces, that she delivered her truth, the journey of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and standing firm in one's power. Each word connected her to a heart in the audience, as she recounted not just her own tale but the narrative of many. She could see nods of understanding, heard snippets of shared laughter, and even caught a few tears glistening against cheeks, proof that she was not alone. As the applause erupted around her, a sense of tranquility filled her being. She stepped down from the stage, breathing in warm relief and self-acceptance. Every moment had led to this realization. She held her worth, not as an abstraction but as a tangible entity, radiant with untapped potential. The affirmation of her journey now transformed into a commitment to continue growing, supporting herself and those around her. And underneath the sprawling Texas sky, with Jake beside her, Emily imagined her life unfolding. Defining her path beyond expectations, she began to sketch her ambition with bold strokes, a life enshrined in authenticity. "Are you ready for the next adventure?" Jake's voice broke through her thoughts, company soothing and grounded. "Absolutely," she smiled, filled with a deep satisfaction that radiated from within, confidence like the Texas sun shimmering on the horizon. For the first time, she truly believed that every hurdle she faced was a chapter in a story only beginning to unfold. At that moment, Emily's heart surged, an open path of possibilities dancing ahead as they walked forth into a world bursting with promise, her spirit vibrantly alive. And now is the time to take action. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us connect with more audiences. Comment your reactions and theories about this phenomenal ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of your support.